Bullies made an alien girl beg for water, until a human boy shared his own. The midday heat over New Phoenix, Arizona pressed down like a physical weight. Out on the exposed recreation grounds of Interspecies Academy, the air shimmered above the packed earth, and the smell of dust, plastic, and overheated electronics hung everywhere. The buildings behind the yard were sleek and climate-controlled, full of carefully balanced atmospheres for all the different species enrolled. But the outdoor zone was the opposite on purpose, a raw slice of earth, left unfiltered as part of the cultural immersion program everyone kept quoting. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Humans mostly just sweated and complained. For Aquarians, it could be deadly. Lyra stood in the middle of the yard, or tried to. Her knees wobbled as she swayed, pale blue skin drying to a worrying dullness. A ring of older students circled her, bottles and canteens raised just out of reach. The reflected glare from clear plastic and metal stabbed at her huge, unblinking eyes. Her gill-flaps at the sides of her neck fluttered too fast, little membranes opening and closing in desperate, useless rhythm. "Please," she managed, the word passing through her compact translation device in front of her throat. The normally smooth Aquarian tones came out flattened and metallic, but the desperation still bled through. "My hydration cycle is incomplete. I require water." Laughter rolled around her. Someone tipped a bottle, so a tiny stream ran down in front of her face, splashing onto the baked ground. The drops vanished instantly, soaked into the thirsty earth before Lyra's fingers could even twitch toward them. "Say it again," the tallest human demanded. Vince Tanner, broad shoulders, Academy athletics crest on his sleeve, light hair darkened with sweat. His grin had that special kind of cruelty you could recognize even across species. "Say, Earth water is superior to Aquarian filtrate," he ordered, shaking his bottle so the water sloshed loudly inside. Behind him, an Arcturon student with pale, ridged skin and forearms chuckled. Next to that one, a towering centurion with heavy plates along his forearms shifted his weight. Amused yellow eyes focused on Lyra. Another human girl with sharp features and perfect hair folded her arms like this was a boring holovid. Lyra's gills fluttered again, the movement jittery and weak. In xenobiology class, the teacher had explained what that meant. Extreme stress, oxygen and moisture balance failing. The white, almost crystalline lines forming at the creases of her elbows and along her fingers weren't just dryness. They were the first signs of actual cellular damage. "I cannot," she said, voice breaking. "The molecular composition is not compatible with." "Wrong answer," the centurion cut in. He pulled the top off his own bottle and poured a slow, deliberate stream into the dirt at her knees. The water darkened the surface for half a second, then disappeared. Lyra's eyes followed every drop as if they were pieces of her soul being wasted. "All that talk about Aquarians being advanced," the Arcturon sneered, "and you can't even survive a little sunlight." Around them, other students watched. Humans, Arcturans, centurions, one or two slender Solnari in their reflective cloaks. A few shifted uneasily. Others recorded with their wrist devices, pretending to just document what they were too scared to stop. No one stepped in until Xander Mitchell arrived. He hadn't planned to be anywhere near the recreation yard. 3 weeks into his transfer, he'd figured out the safest route to the library that avoided most of the senior hangout spots. His strategy at Interspecies Academy was simple. Keep his head down, bury himself in schoolwork, and try not to attract attention from any species at all. That plan died that afternoon. He heard the noise first, a rough mix of laughter, taunts, and the kind of excited murmur that meant something bad was happening. He almost kept walking, almost pretended he hadn't heard. But something in the tone twisted his stomach, the same cold coil of dread he used to feel at his old school, right before things got ugly. Xander changed direction without even fully deciding to. By the time he pushed through the ring of bodies, his shirt clung to his back with sweat. Heat pulsed off the ground through the soles of his shoes. Then he saw Lyra, and everything inside him went tight, and hot at the same time. She was on her knees, arms hanging loosely at her sides. Up close, her skin wasn't just pale blue, it was patchy. Her natural, almost glassy sheen had turned matte. Tiny white cracks webbed across her forearms and the delicate skin near her gills. Her silver Aquarian canteen, the one every Aquarian student had to carry, lay several meters away in the dust, as if someone had kicked it or thrown it. Vince dangled his water bottle above her head, arms stretched just enough that she couldn't reach even if she tried. "One more chance," he said. "Come on. Say it properly. Earth water is superior. Humans are the dominant species." That's the line. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the students glanced up at a pair of Academy monitoring drones hovering just outside the circle. Their lenses glowed a soft blue, recording everything, but still not intervening. Everyone knew the policy: minimal interference in cultural conflicts. Administration loved that phrase. It meant they could watch things fall apart and pretend it was educational. This isn't a cultural conflict, Xander thought. This is torture. His water bottle felt suddenly heavy in his hand. The plastic dug into his fingers. His heart pounded so loud it nearly drowned out everything else. Before he realized what he was doing, he moved. He stepped into the open, breaking the ring. The motion startled a few students back. Others leaned in, eager for more drama. "What's your problem, transfer?" Vince asked, turning with an irritated frown. He swept his gaze up and down Xander in a single dismissive scan. "You lost? This is senior territory." "She needs water," Xander said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "This isn't a joke. Aquarians can't handle this kind of heat. You know that." The sharp-featured girl snorted. "Mind your own business." "This is my business," Xander shot back, surprising himself. "You took her canteen. That's not cultural dynamics. That's endangering a student." He crouched beside Lyra, carefully, aware of Vince stepping closer behind him. Up close, Lyra's breathing was shallow and fast. The membranes at the corners of her large eyes were starting to crack. Her lips, normally a deeper blue, had paled almost to white. Xander unscrewed his bottle, fingers clumsy with sweat. He knew Earth water wasn't ideal for Aquarians. They had their own specialized filtration solutions, but dehydration was worse. Even if it only bought her a few extra minutes, it was something. "Here," he said quietly. "Can you drink?" Lyra's eyes tried to focus on him. Up close, they weren't just big. They were patterned, faint swirls of color branching out from the center like storm clouds. He didn't know if she could understand his words, but she seemed to understand his intent. He tipped the bottle carefully to her lips. She was too weak to lift her arms, so he slid one hand behind her shoulders, lifting her head enough so she wouldn't choke. The first trickle of water touched her mouth. Some spilled, running over her cheeks and down her neck. Wherever the droplets landed, her skin responded almost instantly, darkening slightly, regaining a hint of its previous sheen. Her gills fluttered, then stabilized. "Hey," Vince moved forward. "What do you think you're doing?" The Arcturon grabbed Vince's arm. "Wait," he muttered, suddenly uncertain. If something happens and witnesses say..." Around them, someone hissed, "Teacher drone incoming." That was enough. The tight circle around Lyra shattered as students peeled away, scattering in all directions. Wrist cameras dropped or turned aside. Voices lowered to guilty whispers. By the time the closest monitoring drone drifted closer, the little crowd had already started pretending nothing unusual had happened. Xander ignored all of it. He emptied the rest of his water bottle onto Lyra's skin and into her mouth as carefully as he could. When the bottle ran dry, he lowered her gently back to the ground. Her breathing had improved. The intense cracks in her skin no longer grew, though they hadn't vanished. The horrible dry tightness around her gills looked slightly less severe. "We need your canteen," he said, half to Lyra, half to himself. "Canteen," her translator echoed faintly. "Special solution need." He spotted the silver device in the dust, chased by the shimmer of its shifting surface. Up close, it didn't look like anything human-made. Patterns crawled faintly along the metal, rearranging themselves in slow, hypnotic ways. It felt cool even in the blistering heat, humming softly against his palm. He ran back and placed it into Lyra's trembling hands. Her fingers barely brushed a hidden mechanism when a fine mist of shimmering liquid sprayed over her face and gills. She inhaled it in tiny, desperate gasps. The mist soaked in her skin, and this time the change was obvious. Her color deepened, the cracks softened at their edges, and her gills fluttered more evenly. "Who authorized this?" a sharp voice demanded. Xander looked up. Miss Abernathy, the human biology instructor, strode into the space, blonde hair pulled back, tablet in hand. The teacher drone hovered just behind her shoulder, its lens tracking everything. Miss Abernathy's eyes took in the scene in a heartbeat. Lyra's condition, the fading footprints of a crowd, Xander kneeling in the dust with an empty human water bottle. "What happened?" she asked, voice cutting through the thick, hot air. Lyra's translator crackled. There was a series of clicks and whistles that didn't translate into Terran standard at all, some kind of Aquarian distress code. Then, with obvious effort, words formed. "Atmospheric reaction," she said. "My fault. Forgot hydration cycle." Miss Abernathy's expression flickered with doubt. Her eyes lingered on the scattered footprints, on the faint shape where a circle of students had clearly been standing, on Xander's empty bottle. "Medical team is on the way," she said, already speaking into her emergency channel. "Stay with her, Xander." He did, even as the hover stretcher arrived, even as the medical staff in mixed human and Aquarian gear took over. They adjusted a portable humidity field around Lyra's body, increased local oxygen, scanned her gills and skin with fast, efficient motions. As they prepared to move her, Lyra reached out. Her fingers closed around Xander's wrist. The touch shocked him, cool, faintly sticky, like the surface of a whetstone. Her eyes met his, swirling patterns shifting in ways he didn't know how to read. "Designation," her translator asked quietly, tone softer, almost intimate. "Xander," he said. "Xander Mitchell." "Xander Mitchell," the translator repeated. But the way Lyra's lips shaped the words made them sound like more than just his name. "I will remember." Then the stretcher lifted, humming as it carried her toward the medical wing in a bubble of controlled humidity. Miss Abernathy watched her go, then turned to Xander. For a second, he saw something like gratitude in her eyes. Then her expression hardened into professional lines again. "The truth now, Mr. Mitchell," she said. "What really happened out here?" The Academy rulebook flashed through his mind. Non-interference with other species' customs. Formal channels for complaints. No unauthorized escalation of cultural tensions. On top of that, the more basic, familiar high school reality. Snitch on seniors, and your life becomes a nightmare. But then he pictured Lyra on her knees, skin cracking, surrounded by water she wasn't allowed to reach. Some of the seniors took her canteen, he said, feeling his throat tighten. They were making her beg for water, pouring on the ground. Vince Tanner was one of them. There were a Centuran and an Arcturon, too. Another human girl. I don't know the others' names. Miss Abernathy's jaw clenched. She tapped something into her tablet. "Report to Principal Wong's office after final period," she said. "You'll need to give a formal statement. Dismiss for now." She walked off toward the main building, the teacher drone drifting obediently after her. Xander stood alone in the yard for a moment, the heat suddenly coming back to him in full force now that the adrenaline had dropped. His water bottle felt absurdly light in his hand. He shoved it into his bag and headed toward the shade of the nearest hallway. Great, he thought bitterly as he walked. 3 weeks into a new school, and I've already picked a fight with a counselor's kid. But beneath the anxiety, something steady sat in his chest. Lyra was still alive. That had to count for something. The rest of the day blurred into half-heard lectures and sideways glances. Rumors traveled faster than the Academy's data network. By mid-morning, he could feel people staring at him in every corridor, whispers trailing behind him. That's him. The transfer. The one who interfered. Yeah, the water boy. Picked a fight with Vince. He's dead socially. Every classroom felt a little smaller, every shared space edged with tension. Even in interspecies biology, where Lyra's empty seat at the back of the room felt like a physical hole, students kept sneaking looks at him instead of the hollow slides. By final period, Xander's nerves were worn thin. Still, when the announcement pinged his wristband reminding him of his appointment with Principal Wong, he went. Skipping would only make things worse. The principal's office was in the administrative wing, a quiet area with sound-dampening walls and smarter-than-you glass that shifted from opaque to clear based on some algorithm he didn't understand. A human receptionist with a Centron assistant directed him to take a seat. The chairs were adjustable, capable of flattening or forming around different body types. Xander tried to sit normally and not fidget. "Principal Wong will see you now," the receptionist finally said. Inside, the office was simple but adaptable. Projectors along the walls could simulate different sky colors and lighting spectrums. Right now, they showed a calm, Earth-standard blue. Gravity was normal human baseline. A few chairs of different shapes and sizes told him the room could host mixed-species meetings on short notice. Principal Wong herself sat behind a smooth, semi-transparent desk. Her hair was streaked with silver, pulled back into a tight knot. Her posture was perfect. She looked like the type of person who knew every rule and also knew exactly when to bend one. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, indicating the chair across from her. "Please sit." He did, try not to stare at the display hovering above her desk. He could still see glimpses of Lyra's medical report in scrolling alien-human hybrid text. "I've reviewed the initial incident report and the medical evaluation for student Lyra Navalori," Wong said. "I want to hear your account in your own words." Xander took a breath and told her everything. The heat, the circle of seniors, the way they'd made Lyra beg, her canteen in the dust, the water poured onto the ground, his decision to intervene, the teacher drone, Miss Abernathy's arrival. He skipped how his hands had shaken. That part felt unnecessary. When he finished, silence settled in the room for a beat. "Your actions today demonstrated moral courage," Principal Wong said at last. "You acted when many others did not." Relief flared in his chest, then vanished at her next sentence. "However, you also violated the Academy's non-interference policy for interspecies cultural interactions." Xander stared at her. With respect, Principal Wong, that wasn't culture. She was dying. Her expression softened slightly. "The medical report supports your assessment," she admitted. "Severe dehydration, beginning membrane rupture, electrolyte imbalance that could have become life-threatening within another 20 minutes. She switched files, the glowing text shifting above her desk. "Which is why the students involved will face disciplinary review for endangerment, not merely insensitivity." "So, I'm not in trouble?" Xander asked. "I didn't say that," Wong replied, but there was the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth, almost like a swallowed smile. "Our non-interference policy exists because some species' social rituals can appear harsh or dangerous to outside observers. Intervening without understanding can sometimes cause greater harm. But this time it didn't," he pointed out. "No," she agreed. "In this instance, your judgment was correct, which is why your punishment will be minimal. 2 sessions of cultural sensitivity training to be completed by the end of next week." He could live with that. "Additionally," she continued, and her tone shifted, becoming even more formal, "Ambassador Navalori has requested a formal meeting with you." "Ambassador Lyra Navalori," Wong clarified. "Her full title is Ambassador Lyra Navalori. She is the daughter of the Aquarian diplomatic envoy to Earth. Her enrollment at this academy is part of a pilot program for integration of diplomatic families." Xander's brain stuttered. He hadn't just poured water into some random Aquarian student's mouth. He'd poured water into the mouth of an ambassador. "And the incident today," Wong went on, "could have had significant political consequences. So I didn't just almost watch a girl die," he thought dazedly. "I almost watched an interplanetary disaster." "When is this meeting?" he managed. "Tomorrow morning. You're excused from your first 2 periods," Wong said. "I suggest you review Aquarian diplomatic protocols beforehand. The library's interspecies knowledge exchange terminals should have what you need." She gestured toward the door. "Dismissed, Mr. Mitchell." Xander left the office with his heart hammering again, but for different reasons than earlier that day. He headed straight for the library, mind racing with one thought that kept repeating in a loop. Sharing water with an Aquarian meant something. He just had no idea how much. The Interspecies Academy library always reminded Xander of a museum, a laboratory, and a meditation temple fused into one quiet, humming space. Ceiling panels shifted to mimic neutral daylight, while walls pulsed with data streams in every known written language across 7-star systems. Students drifted silently between aisles, some human, some not, each locked into their own academic orbit. Today, however, Xander walked with a different weight in his chest, the kind that tightened his breathing and made every step feel slightly too loud. He headed straight for an empty terminal near the back wall, far from the windows where the heat outside shimmered like liquid metal. The screen activated at his presence, displaying the Academy seal before shifting into the Interspecies Knowledge Exchange Network, an enormous collection of cross-cultural information that normal schools could never hope to store. When Xander typed Aquarian Cultural Protocols, the search returned hundreds of entries. He clicked the first. Water, for Aquarians, was more than hydration. It was communication, literal communication. Their ancient ancestors had spoken through vibrations and molecular shifts in water long before they evolved modern language. Biochemical messages transmitted through shared moisture formed the basis of early Aquarian memory pools, a fact that astonished Xander the first time he read it. But today, the implications hit harder. To share water with an Aquarian was intimate, sacred, almost familial. He scrolled through more documents, a knot forming in his stomach. In Aquarian custom, exchanging moisture during periods of stress or crisis could establish something called miserkin, a bond stronger than human friendship, something akin to a lifelong oath mixed with shared biological memory. Xander leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "Great," he muttered. "I didn't just break a policy. I stumbled into an ancient alien bonding ritual." An alert pinged on his wristband. One new message, anonymous sender. His pulse jumped as he opened it. "Watch your back, Waterboy. Nobody likes a species traitor." The words glowed cold on the screen. A threat, short and sharp. No signature, no icon, nothing to trace. The message deleted itself after 5 seconds, dissolving into static. For a moment, Xander just stared at the blank display. It surprised him how little fear he felt. Mostly, he felt tired. Tired of people treating aliens like enemies. Tired of students pretending they understood superiority because of what planet they were born on. But mixed into that tiredness was something steadier. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done, not even a little. He returned to reading, absorbing as much as his overwhelmed brain could manage. Some lines seemed to blur together. Ancestral resonance markers, molecular memory transfer, cultural significance of hydration cycles. But one detail stood out like a blaring alarm. Any direct liquid exchange involving an Aquarian in distress may imprint emotional states or biochemical signatures from the assisting individual. Imprint, meaning, when he poured water into Lyra's mouth, traces of his emotional state, fear, urgency, determination, might have been transferred along with the water. "Oh, that's just fantastic," he whispered. "Now she might literally feel how freaked out I was." He would have kept reading for hours if a shadow hadn't fallen across the screen. Researching for tomorrow's meeting, Xander spun around. Principal Wong stood behind him, hands clasped behind her back, face unreadable. He immediately straightened, stomach lurching. "Ah, yes," trying to understand Aquarian customs. Her expression softened by a fractional degree. "Good. Approach that meeting with humility and respect, Mr. Mitchell. Ambassador Navalori is unique among her people." She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. Everything Xander had learned online hinted at the same truth. Lyra wasn't just a normal student. Then Wong nodded once. "Report to the diplomatic wing at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late." She walked off before he could respond, leaving him staring at the screen while anxiety curled like smoke inside him. That night, Xander dreamed of water, endless, shimmering, alien water swirling with blue light and voices he didn't understand. He woke feeling like something inside him had shifted, though he couldn't explain what or how. By morning, his stomach was tight enough that breakfast felt impossible. He dressed carefully in his academy uniform, palms sweating every time he thought about meeting an actual Aquarian ambassador. His parents wished him luck, but didn't pry, something he was ridiculously grateful for. The diplomatic wing felt different from the rest of the school. The air was cooler in some areas, warmer in others, adjusting for different species. Security drones glided across the hallway in perfect silence. At the end of a long corridor, a door scanned his faceplate, then opened with a soft hiss. Humidity slammed into him like a wall. Inside, the air was thick and cool, saturated with moisture until it felt like breathing a fine mist. Light shifted to blue-green tones, dimmer than human preference. Gravity eased just enough that his steps felt slightly buoyant, like walking after a long swim. The center of the room held a shallow pool of luminescent water. Floating within it was Lyra. She looked entirely different from the dehydrated girl he'd seen yesterday. Her skin glowed with shifting bioluminescent patterns, like ocean currents alive beneath the surface. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood a taller Aquarian whose skin held deep, elegant streaks of purple and blue. They moved not with steps, but with fluid precision, gliding instead of walking. "Approach, Xander Mitchell of Earth," the taller Aquarian said. The translator's voice was layered, musical, almost hypnotic. Xander moved forward, head lowered as the protocol guidelines recommended. He stopped a few feet from the water's edge. "Thank you for receiving me," he said carefully. "Minister Navalori." A melodic chime echoed, Aquarian laughter. "I am not Ambassador Navalori," the tall figure corrected. "I am Minister Navalori. My daughter," he gestured gracefully toward Lyra, "holds the ambassadorial title." Xander blinked, thrown off. "But she's our age." "Titles among Aquarians are not tied to age," Lyra said, stepping from the pool with a dripping, liquid grace. "They're determined by biochemical resonance with ancestral memory." Of course, Xander thought, because why would alien diplomacy follow any rules that made sense? Before he could embarrass himself again, Minister Navalori spoke. "You saved my daughter's life. This action carries cultural weight among our people, and unintended consequences." Xander swallowed hard. "If I violated any customs, I truly didn't know. I only wanted to help." "That ignorance protects you," the minister replied. "You did not understand the nature of the bond you initiated. Yet the bond exists." Lyra stepped closer, her enormous eyes swirling with faint colors. Even with the translator, he could feel the sincerity behind her words. "When you shared water with me, Xander Mitchell, you created a provisional connection," she said. "Miserkin, a water bond of mutual obligation." Xander felt all the air leave his lungs. I didn't mean to form anything permanent. That is why we offer you choices," Minister Navalori said. "3 paths stand before you." Lyra lifted a small vial filled with shimmering blue liquid and held it between them. "The first path, accept the bond formally. You would become waterkin to our lineage, with privileges and responsibilities that endure your entire life." Xander tried not to choke. "The second, dissolve the bond through ritual. Honor given, honor returned. No obligation remains." And the third, declare the act purely medical, outside cultural meaning. The bond becomes null through mutual acceptance. Silence followed. Xander thought about it. All of it. The responsibility, the weight, the permanent connection. He wasn't ready for that. But ignoring the act entirely felt wrong, too. What happened wasn't meaningless. "I choose the second option," he said finally. "Respectful dissolution." Minister Navalori bowed shallowly, skin glowing approval. A wise decision. The ritual was simple but powerful. Xander tasted 3 drops of the shimmering liquid. It was like water, but alive somehow, like a memory disguised as moisture. For a moment, he felt something vast brush his mind. Oceans rising beneath alien stars, voices rippling through liquid currents, a sense of history deeper than anything humans had ever touched. He whispered his name and his intent to dissolve the bond. Lyra mirrored the action, speaking a sequence of pure Aquarian sounds the translator didn't attempt to interpret. The air vibrated faintly. "It is done," the minister said. "The emergency bond is dissolved, but the memory of your compassion remains." Lyra stepped closer, eyes soft. "I would still like to pursue a human connection. What you call friendship. Despite everything, fear, ritual, politics." Xander found himself smiling. "I like that too." Lyra's skin brightened a vivid blue, an Aquarian sign of pleased acceptance. But before the warmth of the moment could settle fully, the minister spoke again. "There is one more matter." Xander tensed. "The biochemical exchange between you has produced unexpected effects." Lyra lifted her hand. Patterns glowed faintly beneath her skin, patterns that hadn't been there before. "The water you shared contained trace enzymes unique to human physiology," she explained. "They have integrated into my cellular structure, increasing my resistance to Earth's dryness by nearly 20%. Xander's heart thudded. "So humans help Aquarians adapt?" "Potentially," the minister confirmed. "And this possibility has significant scientific and diplomatic importance." Xander exhaled slowly, trying to absorb it. "So my water didn't just keep you alive? It changed you." "Beneficially," Lyra said, "and safely. But we must study the effect further." Xander wasn't sure whether to be honored or terrified. Before he could decide, a soft tone chimed near the doorway. A diplomatic assistant appeared, bowing in Aquarian style. "Ambassador Navalori, Minister Navalori. The medical team is ready to analyze the new parameters." The minister nodded. "Our discussion concludes here for now. Xander Mitchell, you have shown compassion. And now, you stand at the beginning of something greater than you understand." Lyra approached him again, gathering the woven shawl draped around her shoulders. "I will see you at the academy," she said, voice quieter. "We have much to learn. Together." Xander left the diplomatic chamber feeling lighter and heavier all at once. As the door closed behind him and the humidity faded back into normal hallway air, a single, overwhelming truth settled into his mind. He had stepped into something that would change not only his life, but possibly two entire species. And he wasn't sure he was ready, but he was certain he wasn't walking away. When Xander stepped out of the diplomatic wing, it felt like emerging from another world. The temperature dropped instantly, the moist Aquarian air giving way to the dry, sharp atmosphere of the academy's main hallways. His clothes clung slightly from the humidity he'd just walked through, and his hair refused to sit right no matter how many times he ran his fingers through it. None of that mattered. His mind was still buzzing, overloaded with new information, new implications, and emotions he hadn't sorted yet. He had expected the meeting to be awkward or formal, maybe scary, but he hadn't expected rituals or cultural bonds or the revelation that his biology had fundamentally altered an alien girl's ability to survive on Earth. And definitely not the part about molecular imprinting. The idea that Lyra might have absorbed traces of his emotional state felt surreal, like something out of a sci-fi show rather than his real life. "Just breathe," he told himself under his breath as he walked. But breathing didn't help much. Everywhere he turned, whispers seemed to follow. Students giving sideways glances, hushed conversations stopping when he stepped into earshot, even a few discreet wrist device flashes that suggested someone had snapped a picture of him. He didn't need subtitles. He knew what they were thinking. That's the boy who poured water into an Aquarian ambassador's mouth. That's the human who interfered with seniors. That's the one who's causing waves. He pushed through the buzz and made it to his next class, interspecies biology. Professor Jameson was already writing on a floating hollow board, diagrams of cell structures drifting around him. He was a tall man with a worn posture, the kind of teacher who always looked slightly exhausted but perpetually fascinated by his own subject. Alien species floored him with curiosity the way volcanoes fascinate geologists. Xander sat near the center, trying to take notes, but his brain kept replaying Lyra's expression during the ritual. The strange softness in her eyes, the almost electric stillness in the room, the way the shimmering liquid had tasted more alive than anything he had ever swallowed. He barely heard the lecture until Jameson said something that snapped him back into focus. And this brings us to cross-species biochemical interactions. Rare, but profoundly important. Xander's pen froze mid-sentence. Jameson tapped a diagram showing two very different cells interacting under stress. In certain cases, the teacher continued, a species' biological compounds can interact unexpectedly with another's cellular structure. Sometimes harmful, sometimes neutral, but occasionally, very occasionally, the effects can be beneficial. A murmur went through the class. Xander's heart thudded painfully. Jameson paced, hands waving as he spoke. A famous example is the Archer-Terran respiratory symbiosis found during early Mars colonization. Human settlers exposed to trace Arcturon microbial flora developed a 30% increase in oxygen uptake. This adaptation is still used medically today. A pure accident, yet one with massive implications. The class scribbled notes. So yes, accidental biological exchanges can change everything. Xander's stomach flipped. Was Jameson just lecturing? Or had he heard something? Did he know? As the bell rang, Xander packed up quickly, eager to blend into the hallway crowd and disappear. But as he stepped outside, Lyra was already waiting near the environmental barrier in the cafeteria, her skin faintly shining under the overhead lights. He paused, unsure whether approaching her was the right move. The whispers around the cafeteria intensified the moment students noticed them looking at each other. Lyra gave a small gesture, one he had started recognizing as an Aquarian form of invitation. He walked toward her table. "This seat is available, Xander Mitchell," she said in her smooth translator voice. He sat down, trying to ignore the sudden hush around them. The cafeteria, designed to host dozens of species simultaneously, seemed unnervingly quiet as dozens of eyes tracked him. "You appear unsettled," Lyra observed. Xander exhaled, just processing everything. Lyra's skin shifted in a slow ripple. Humans often experience cognitive overload when confronted with complex emotional variables. He almost smiled. "Yeah, that sounds about right." She examined a piece of her gelatinous Aquarian food, letting it dissolve into her skin. "I reviewed your academic records. You maintain strong performance in multiple subjects. Your brain is well-equipped for adaptation. You read my records? They were available to the consulate as part of the meeting preparation," Lyra explained. "Your father's research history also became relevant." Xander stiffened. "My dad? Why?" Lyra's eyes softened. "Because his work intersects with the enzyme complex you carry." Xander blinked, stunned. "My dad studies that." "Yes." His earlier research explored adaptive resilience in human physiology. It appears your genetics amplify certain stress response enzymes. This increase may explain why the integration effect on me was unusually strong. He let out a shaky breath. "So, I'm special." Lyra tilted her head. "Statistically, you are an outlier. That is not the same as special. All sapiens have unique properties." He snorted. "Yeah. You really know how to keep a guy humble." Lyra's skin brightened, Aquarian amusement. "Humility is a desirable trait, Xander Mitchell." Before he could respond, a shadow fell over the table. Vince Tanner. The cafeteria seemed to hold its breath. "Mitchell," Vince said flatly. Then he nodded stiffly at Lyra. "Ambassador." Xander almost braced for conflict, but Vince's expression wasn't the sneering cruelty from before. He looked uncomfortable, like he was forcing himself to be here. Principal Wong must have made him apologize, Xander thought. "Look," Vince muttered, jaw tight. "About yesterday." But whatever apology he meant to offer soured halfway out of his mouth. "I was told to apologize," he said instead. "So sorry." Lyra observed him for several seconds before responding. Apology registered. No lasting damage persists. Her calm, formal tone only seemed to irritate Vince, though he tried to hide it. "My father wants to make sure this doesn't escalate," he muttered. "He says this place is already too soft on aliens." Xander felt his anger flare. "Is that meant to be a threat?" "It's a statement," Vince said with a strange mix of defiance and resignation. "Just watch your back. Both of you." With that, he turned and walked away. Lyra's skin darkened slightly. He is conflicted. His emotional matrix shows resentment, shame, and fear. Fear. Yes, Lyra said. Your intervention disrupted his social dominance. His father's expectations weigh heavily upon him. Xander absorbed that quietly. The idea that Vince was struggling under pressure didn't excuse his cruelty, but it explained some things. Lyra gazed at him for a long moment. There's another matter, Xander Mitchell. He straightened. What is it now? This morning, she said, lowering her voice, I detected further integration of your biochemical markers into my cellular system. His heartbeat spiked. What does that mean? Lyra lifted her hand, letting her skin shimmer with faint iridescent lines. Your enzymes continue to interact with my cells. The effect is beneficial, increasing my dehydration resistance now by approximately 18.3%. Xander felt his breath catch. Is that dangerous for you? No, Lyra said firmly. But it is unprecedented. And what does your medical team say? They wish to study the effect formally, she replied. Which brings us to another question. Will you participate in a controlled research study? Xander hesitated. What would that involve? Primarily fluid samples, she explained. Blood, saliva, processed water. All non-invasive. The goal is to understand which components enhance my adaptation. Xander nodded slowly. It was overwhelming, but he couldn't deny the importance. Yeah, he said. I'll help, but I need to tell my parents first. Of course. Lyra folded her hands. Your cooperation may change Aquarian life on Earth. Before he could respond, the cafeteria suddenly erupted in noise outside the windows. Students rushed toward the transparent walls, whispering. Xander and Lyra turned. A protest group had gathered outside the main gates of the academy. Hand-painted signs waved in the blistering sun. Earth for Earthlings. No water for OFF worlders. Aliens drain our resources. Lyra stiffened, gills tightening. Xander saw her skin patterns constrict. A clear Aquarian stress signal. Security drones activated immediately, forming a visible perimeter. Human faculty began ushering students away from the windows. But then Xander heard a familiar voice shout above the crowd. There she is, the Aquarian princess. Counselor Tanner, Vince's father. The man pointed directly at Lyra, face twisted in rage. Earth children follow the rules. But this one? She gets special treatment, while humans suffer water ration shortages. Lyra stayed perfectly still, even though her hands shook faintly. Xander stepped closer, instinctively positioning himself at her side. Security drones surged forward, blocking the protesters. Lyra inhaled sharply, then stepped forward anyway. Counselor Tanner, she said through her translator, voice steady despite the tremor in her eyes. Aquarians contribute more water to the regional atmosphere than we extract. Your statement is incorrect. Tanner faltered, caught off guard by her directness. Before he could reply, a sleek diplomatic vehicle glided to the curb. The door opened automatically. Ambassador Navalori. A voice called from inside. Your transport has arrived. Lyra turned to Xander. Will you accompany me? She asked softly. There is more we must discuss. Xander looked at the hostile crowd, then at Lyra's trembling gills. Yeah, he said immediately. I'm coming. He had caused this rippling change. He wouldn't leave her to face it alone. The moment Xander stepped into the Aquarian diplomatic vehicle, the air shifted from blistering desert heat to a cool, humid cushion that wrapped around him like a gentle wave. The doors sealed shut with a soft hiss, muting the chants of the protest outside. A faint blue glow rippled through the interior, illuminating the transparent walls with patterns that pulsed like slow heartbeats. Lyra exhaled, an unmistakable sign of relief. Her gills relaxed, the trembling in her hands steadying as the humidity settled into her skin. Thank you for coming, she said, her translator's tone softened to a near whisper. Remaining outside with Counselor Tanner would have increased my stress index significantly. Xander shook his head. You shouldn't have to deal with that at all, Lyra, especially not over something you didn't choose. Lyra blinked slowly, an Aquarian gesture that indicated acknowledgement. Nor did you choose the consequences of your compassion, yet you faced them alongside me. For a moment, neither spoke. The vehicle glided across the city with silent, frictionless speed, the world outside blurring into streaks of desert landscape and urban structures. Inside, the atmosphere remained calm and steady, like a sealed underwater sanctuary. When Lyra finally broke the silence, her tone had shifted into something more formal. "There is much we must discuss, Xander Mitchell. Recent developments have placed us at the intersection of political, scientific, and social conflict." He nodded. "I figured. Nothing about this situation seems small anymore." Lyra tapped a control pad embedded in the seat. A holographic display appeared between them, Aquarian script swirling before translating into Terran symbols. "This is the proposed research protocol drafted by my medical team," she said. "However, it is not the most urgent matter." Xander leaned forward. "What is?" Lyra hesitated. Counselor Tanner's actions indicate that he is preparing a political offensive. His legislation, if passed, will limit Earth-based presence for water-dependent species, specifically Aquarians. Xander felt cold despite the humid air. "But that's not fair. You're not draining Earth's water. You literally contribute more than you take." "Accuracy does not always influence political outcomes," Lyra replied. "Emotional narratives often overpower factual data." "Then we give them new data," Xander said. "Show them the adaptation research. Prove Aquarians can thrive on Earth without heavy resource support." Lyra's eyes shifted in a swirl of deep blue and silver, an Aquarian sign of cautious optimism. "Your confidence is unexpected but appreciated." The vehicle slowed as it approached the Mitchell home. Lyra raised a hand, and the privacy barrier lifted, allowing Xander to step out into the fading afternoon light. "Will you be available via the Academy network this evening?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I'll be online." She gave a small motion, part nod, part wave, before the vehicle sealed and pulled away. Explaining the last 2 days to his parents took nearly an hour. His father listened with bright-eyed fascination, practically vibrating with scientific excitement when Xander mentioned the enzyme interactions. His mother's reaction, however, was more reserved. She paced slowly through the living room, arms folded, absorbing every detail with a look of growing concern. "You discovered something that could change Aquarian existence on Earth," she said at last. "And now a government official is openly hostile toward you both. This isn't schoolyard trouble anymore." Xander sank into the couch. "I know." Dr. Mitchell waved a hologram display in the air. "But the enzyme effects. My research team has been studying something similar for months. This could unify so many threads we haven't been able to connect." His mother shot him a sharp look. "Alan, be careful. Interdepartmental collaboration with alien consulates isn't exactly encouraged without approvals." "It's research, Elena," he said with a dismissive gesture. "Scientific advancement should transcend politics." "Politics have a habit of noticing when they're being transcended," she countered, "especially when powerful council members like Tanner feel threatened." Xander knew she wasn't wrong. Every time he saw Counselor Tanner's face twisted with hostility at the gates, the weight of it hit him all over again. Later that night, after dinner and a long shower to wash off the stress of the day, Xander checked his tablet. A new message from Lyra awaited him. Her note was formal but warm, thanking him for assisting her at the protest and attaching the full research proposal. At the end, she added, "The consulate has extended an invitation for your family to attend a cultural exchange this weekend. Your presence would be beneficial." Xander forwarded the proposal to his father, expecting another explosion of enthusiasm. Instead, his tablet buzzed almost immediately as Dr. Mitchell asked Xander to meet him in his home office. He found his father surrounded by floating molecular diagrams, his expression far more serious than before. "Xander," Dr. Mitchell began, "this research, this enzyme complex, it matches something my team has been struggling to understand. But if Counselor Tanner opposes Aquarian integration, he'll oppose anything that helps them adapt to Earth. You think he'd sabotage the research?" Xander asked. His father didn't hesitate. "Yes, and not just sabotage. He may try to block it legally, politically, or through pressure on the academy. Xander's jaw tightened. Then we need to get ahead of him. His father studied him for a moment. What exactly happened during that water exchange, son? The biochemical imprint described here, this isn't common. Xander scratched his head. I don't know. I just reacted. I didn't want her to die. Dr. Mitchell placed a hand on his shoulder. Sometimes the most powerful discoveries come from instinct. But instinct doesn't shield us from consequences. The weekend approached faster than expected. The Aquarian consulate shimmered like a living sculpture, all flowing lines and water-filled conduits snaking beneath translucent floors. As Xander and his parents stepped inside, they were greeted by Minister Navalori, dressed in formal attire woven from living aquatic fibers that shifted gently like drifting seaweed. Welcome to our consulate, the minister said. Your presence honors our community. Lyra appeared moments later, her skin glowing with bioluminescent patterns that suggested joy. Xander Mitchell, she said, her translator harmonizing with the soft hum of the environment. I am pleased you accepted our invitation. The cultural exchange unfolded like stepping into another world. Bioluminescent art displays moved like living galaxies trapped inside water. Music rippled through membranes stretched across circular frames, vibrations forming melodies no human instrument could produce. And then the memory pools, shallow crystalline basins that glowed as if the water was alive with thought. Lyra guided the Mitchells to a smaller pool. This is a familial memory archive, she explained. Our experiences, emotions, and ancestral patterns are preserved here. Xander watched as Lyra dipped her fingers into the liquid. The water brightened instantly, swirling into glowing shapes that hinted at scenes. Vast oceans, towering cities, flowing script in an alien tone. That is how you share history. Xander's mother asked softly. Yes, Lyra replied. Our past is not written. It is lived. The weight of that hit Xander with unexpected force. After the demonstration, Minister Navalori addressed them more formally. We have reviewed early data. The enzyme effect your son produced, Dr. Mitchell, could revolutionize Aquarian adaptation. Yet political resistance grows stronger. Dr. Mitchell nodded. We need institutional support, which is why, Lyra continued, we propose a joint educational research initiative, student-led, academically supervised, outside direct diplomatic oversight. Xander's mother's eyes widened, meaning the academy leads the study instead of the consulate. Yes, Minister Navalori said, this creates legal protections. Security Council interference becomes more difficult. Lyra looked directly at Xander. And the project requires a human lead researcher, one with first-hand involvement, one with a unique biochemical signature. Xander felt the words hit him like a physical push. You mean me? Yes, Lyra said simply. Your involvement is essential. It's also dangerous, his mother said immediately. You be stepping into a political storm. Progress often invites storms, the minister replied calmly. Xander's father placed a hand on his son's back. You don't have to decide right now. But think about what this means for Earth, for Aquarians, for integration itself. Xander looked at Lyra. Her bioluminescent skin glowed with a steady, unwavering light. You saved my life, she said. But more than that, your biology has already begun to change mine. Together, we may change much more. He swallowed hard. Suddenly, he understood. This wasn't about being a hero or being brave. It wasn't about school politics or making friends or even stopping bullies. This was about choosing whether he wanted to be part of something bigger than himself, something that could reshape the future of multiple species. I'll do it, Xander said quietly. I'll lead the research. Lyra's skin brightened in a flare of brilliant blue, Aquarian joy. But just as the moment settled into something hopeful, an Aquarian aide rushed into the chamber. Minister Navalori, he said urgently, the Terran Security Council has issued a new directive. They demand immediate review of all interspecies adaptation research. Lyra's glow dimmed. Her father's expression darkened with concern, and Xander realized that the storm they discussed had already begun. The words from the Aquarian aide hung in the chamber like a cold, descending fog. Immediate review. Minister Navalori repeated, his voice steady but edged with tension. The Security Council wastes no time. Lyra's skin dimmed toward deep navy, a clear Aquarian signal of rising anxiety. Their timing is not coincidence. My father, this directive aligns too closely with Counselor Tanner's agenda. Xander's pulse kicked into a faster rhythm. So he went straight to the Security Council after the protest. Undoubtedly, Minister Navalori said. He wishes to stall or prevent the adaptation research before it can produce conclusive results. Xander clenched his fists. He's afraid of what it means. If Aquarians can adapt to Earth, he loses his excuse to treat you like outsiders. Lyra lowered her head, the faint glow under her skin pulsing in troubled patterns. Political fear often leads to harmful decisions. Minister Navalori straightened. I must respond to the directive. Ambassador Navalori, he nodded to his daughter. You and Xander must continue your preparations. There will be resistance. But your research, once substantiated, may become the strongest argument for cooperation. He left the chamber, robes whispering against the moist floor as he moved with Aquarian grace. Lyra turned toward Xander. Our window of opportunity narrows. The Academy's involvement is now essential. Xander swallowed hard. Then let's start now. 2 days later, the Academy was buzzing like a disturbed nest. News of the Security Council review had spread, twisting into rumors that mutated with every retelling. Some whispered that alien programs would be shut down. Others claimed Aquarian students would be sent home. A few insisted humanity would reclaim control of the Academy. Xander walked through it all like he was moving against the current, tension biting at the back of his neck. When Lyra approached him in the hallway, every conversation around them seemed to collapse into silence. Xander Mitchell, she said, Professor Jameson has granted us access to the advanced xenobiology lab during free periods. Good, he said. We need every second we can get. She nodded, then added in a quieter tone, and there's someone else who wishes to speak with us. Before he could ask who, a familiar figure stepped around the corner. Vince Tanner. Students nearby froze. Vince wasn't surrounded by his usual entourage. In fact, he looked strangely alone, hands shoved deep into his pockets, jaw tight with uncertainty. Xander's immediate instinct was defensive, but Lyra placed a light hand on his arm, grounding him. Vince stopped a few feet away. He kept his gaze on the floor for a beat before lifting it. I want to help, he said. Xander blinked. What? Vince exhaled sharply. My father's been talking strategy nonstop at home. He thinks I'm on his side. Expect me to follow his lead one day. So he's telling me everything. And if he's planning to sabotage your research or manipulate the council, I can warn you. Xander stared at him, trying to gauge sincerity. This was the same guy who had tormented Lyra, mocked her, made her beg for water. Lyra broke the silence first. Why assist us now? Vince's expression twisted. Resentment, shame, conflict all tangled together. Because I didn't sign up to hurt people. Not like that. And I didn't think, he swallowed. I didn't think helping my father meant pushing entire species off the planet. Lyra's eyes softened, but her voice remained measured. Your motivations are complex. You're telling me, Vince muttered with a humorless laugh. But if I do nothing, I become him. And I don't want to be him. Xander hesitated, but finally nodded. Okay, then tell us everything. With Vince's insider knowledge, the research group expanded quickly. What began as a quiet collaboration between Lyra and Xander soon grew into a multi-species effort. Arcturon microbiologists offered insights into membrane resilience. Central biochemists assisted with enzyme mapping. Even Silnari students, usually reserved, contributed atmospheric analysis models. It became the most diverse study team the Academy had ever assembled. And under Professor Jameson's supervision, the laboratory hummed with new purpose. Xander stood at a console while holographic readouts displayed enzyme clusters and Aquarian cell structures side by side. If we isolate the enzyme variant that bonded with Lyra's cells, we can identify what caused the enhanced dehydration resistance. Lyra adjusted a microscope-like device, its lenses shifting in fluid spirals. The bonding occurred during a moment of severe physiological instability. That event may be key in determining the integration threshold. Across the room, Vince sorted through council briefing logs on his tablet. "My father's planning to argue resource manipulation," he said. "He wants to claim Aquarians use Earth water inefficiently. If we disprove that with actual data, his argument collapses." Xander smirked faintly. "He's not going to love that, is he?" "No," Vince said dryly. "He is absolutely not." Hours passed, then days, and the research grew sharper, clearer, stronger. Their findings pointed towards something undeniably groundbreaking. Human enzymes could significantly enhance Aquarian environmental resilience. Over a dozen test models confirmed it. Lyra's cellular scans showed increased membrane stability. Artificial humidity chambers replicated the effect in controlled conditions. Professor Jameson pressed his fingers against his temples as he reviewed the collective data. "This," he whispered, "is monumental. Do you understand? This is the kind of development that rewrites interspecies medical protocols." Lyra's skin glowed with pride. "Then we must present it before the council vote." Xander nodded, though anxiety pressed against his ribs. "We'll need a strong presentation. Data, proof, transparency." Professor Jameson clapped a hand on Xander's shoulder. "You've stepped into the role of lead researcher better than any student I've taught." The praise didn't inflate Xander's ego. It weighed on him instead, because now the stakes were heavy enough to crush anyone. The morning of the vote arrived with the same tension as the atmosphere before a storm. Students gathered around media screens. Teachers exchanged worried glances. Security drones hovered near administrative doors. The academy felt like a vessel bracing for impact. Xander, Lyra, Vince, and Professor Jameson were escorted to the council chambers, a vast dome lined with representatives from 7 species and key human officials. Counselor Tanner stood at the center, projecting authority with every step. "This legislation," he announced, "protects Earth resources and ensures responsible regulation of alien presence on our soil." His words struck a chord in some council members. Others frowned. Lyra watched stoically, but her skin dimmed in slow, worried pulses. Tanner continued, "Water-dependent species require triple the resource allocation of humans. Their presence. That claim is scientifically inaccurate," Lyra said suddenly, stepping forward with Xander beside her. Murmurs rose around the chamber. Xander activated the holographic display. Their research projections appeared, shimmering in blues and greens. "This data," Xander said, "was collected using Academy equipment, verified by multi-species collaboration. It demonstrates a significant discovery. Human enzymes can increase Aquarian dehydration resistance by 78%, reducing environmental support requirements dramatically." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Lyra added, "Our species not only uses fewer Earth resources than commonly believed. We now have proof that we can adapt even further. Together." One council member, a stern human woman, frowned. "And how is this enzyme exchange discovered?" Xander swallowed, then answered honestly, "By accident. I helped Lyra during a medical emergency. That action triggered the integration we now understand." Tanner scowled. "A convenient story." Vince stood abruptly. "It's the truth." All eyes shifted to him. "Counselor Tanner expects me to support his movement," Vince said, voice steady. "But I saw what happened. Lyra nearly died because of cruelty, human cruelty, and Xander stopped it. What they discovered afterward wasn't manipulation. It wasn't politics. It was science. Progress. A chance for peace." A stunned silence followed. The council deliberated briefly. Then the vote was cast. Green lights lit up around the dome, one after another after another. The legislation failed. Lyra's skin flashed in brilliant turquoise joy. Her gills fluttered with relief. Xander let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Vince sagged backward, tension draining from his face. Minister Navalori approached with solemn grace. "Your research," he said, "has altered the trajectory of Earth-Aquarian relations. You have done more than you realize." Months passed. Their findings became formalized, peer-reviewed, and adopted into adaptive treatment programs across Earth and Aquarian diplomatic centers. The Mitchell Navalry Protocol became standard procedure for Aquarians living on terrestrial worlds. 3 years later, the Academy Auditorium glowed with celebration. Graduation banners hung between atmospheric regulators, each adorned with emblems of all 7 species. Xander and Lyra stood side by side at the podium, co-valedictorians. "You ready for this?" Xander whispered. Lyra tilted her head, her skin shimmering with calm confidence. "Statistically, our speech has a 96% chance of being well received." Xander grinned. "I'll take those odds." As they stepped forward to address the crowd, Lyra leaned in just slightly. "Do you recall the first day we met?" she whispered. Xander heaved a quiet laugh. "Kinda hard to forget. You were drying out. Vince was being a jerk, and I panicked. You poured water into my mouth without hesitation," she said softly. "An instinct that changed everything." He looked at her, really looked at her. "I think we would have ended up here anyway." "A statistically improbable claim," Lyra said, her eyes shimmering. "Yet, I agree." Together, they addressed their graduating class, a living testament to what cooperation across worlds could achieve. 7 species, 1 academy, and a future strengthened not by sameness, but by unity.